9:16. You're listening to News Radio 620 WTMJ. We haven't played that theme song for some time. I don't know that he's actually gotten it since he became Speaker, joining me on the line. Speaker of the House of Representatives. Paul Ryan. It's like old times, isn't it?
It is. Sort of like Groundhog Day.
It is. Well, let's talk about it. I want to talk about Hillary. I want to talk about Donald Trump. I want to talk about a variety of things. But let's start off by talking about what the House of Representatives is going to do. It certainly sounds like the Democrats are not happy with the bill that you are presenting, and that there might be more sit-ins and disruptions. How do you plan to handle that if that happens?
Well, I'll get into that a little bit later this week about the specific details. But first of all, when you were sworn in as a member of Congress, you take an oath to the Constitution. And the Constitution contains something we call the Bill of Rights. And there are two amendments in the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, which they're discussing bringing legislation to the floor, which we very much believe violate and compromise those two amendments. The right to bear arms, which is an individual right affirmed by the Supreme Court, and the right to due process. Any bureaucrat or anybody can be put on a no-fly list, terror watch list by a bureaucrat at the Homeland Security. What they're suggesting would compromise a law-abiding citizen's due process rights and Second Amendment rights. We believe that there is a better way of going after, number one, terrorists, which is really the issue here, but number two, of giving the law enforcement the tools they need to prevent a would-be terrorist or a terrorist suspect from getting guns without compromising a citizen's basic Bill of Rights, Second Amendment and Fifth Amendment rights.
Okay, how do we do that? How do we have somebody that they're looking at as a possible terrorist, have not committed a crime? How do you prevent that person from getting a cache of weapons?
Yeah, so this is obviously something we've been looking at for a few weeks now. This isn't something we just popped together. We've been working on. The FBI came to us and said, make sure you do this right, because if you do it wrong, you could actually screw up our terrorist investigations. You could tip someone off the wrong way, and that could blow our investigation, right. Number one. Number two, we have to give law enforcement a period of time so that when a sale is attempted, they are notified and they have time to do something about it, but they have to go to a judge. And a person has the right to go to a judge with due process to protect their rights. Because, remember, a person is placed on these lists. Stephen Hayes from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, was put on the no-fly list. So you've got to make sure that a citizen has their due process rights protected. Because if you simply say an unelected bureaucracy can unilaterally forfeit a citizen's rights, then we have infringed upon their constitutional rights. And so what we think we can do here, and this is what the legislation we're bringing, in addition to our other terrorist reforms that we think are necessary, is giving law some time they need to say, okay, is this sale something that we want to contest? Is this somebody that we believe we have probable cause is a bad person? Then they have the ability to intervene, and that person has the ability to have their day in court. That is very important so that we preserve our constitutional rights.
Okay,
now,
so
obviously Democrats don't like that. They want us to not do it that way. Part of this, I think, is a stunt. Part of this, I think, is a distraction away from the terrorism issue. But also, if we succumb under populism to attrit or reduce a person's constitutional rights, then I believe, as a member of Congress, I am violating my oath to my constituents to uphold the Constitution.
What are the prospects? I assume that you will have enough votes to pass this package through the House of Representatives. What are the prospects in the Senate? If the Democrats are looking for a campaign issue, obviously they would not be interested in passing this on to the president's desk.
That's right. It's a good question. They've defeated everything in the Senate. So they've had this vote, and they had the vote on the very thing that they're calling for, and that, too, was defeated in the Senate. So nothing... either this is in the Senate, the Cornyn Amendment. In the House, it's called the Zeldin Amendment. In the Senate, there are different versions of it. There was the Collins, the amendment. It's called the King Amendment in the House. They were both defeated in the Senate. So I don't know where this goes in the Senate, but we do believe that this does need to be addressed. We think there's a smart way of denying terrorist weapons without compromising a citizen's rights, basic Bill of Rights. And, oh, by the way, there are some issues we need to deal with respect to terrorism, going after homegrown jihadists, rescinding passports of people who leave and go and join terrorist organizations. So we think there are holes in our laws that we need to deal with, and that is part of this. Because the issue here is homegrown jihadists being radicalized. The issue is terrorism. The issue isn't compromising law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment and Fifth Amendment rights.
Are you also going to be able to address because I saw from one of your releases, you'd address the issue of mental health, which, comes up after some of these other mass shootings, and yet everybody sort of wrings their hands and doesn't do anything about it. Does your legislation address that at all?
That's a separate bill, and we're voting on it this evening. So this is a bill that's been 3 years in the making. Tim Murphy, a congressman from Pennsylvania, a clinical psychologist, had been working on this issue for years. We finally got this issue to where we actually have consensus. It came out of the Commerce Committee by voice vote, meaning unanimous. Mm-hmm. And so we believe that this dealing with mental health reform is very important as well. A lot of these shootings were mentally unstable people, and we think that we had huge gaps in our mental health laws that need to be fixed. And that's a bill we're bringing to the floor this evening as well. And so if they try to disrupt that, then this is really nothing but a cheap publicity stunt, preventing good law from being made, which is actually getting at the real problems here. We want to make sure terrorists don't get guns without infringing on citizens' rights. We want to make sure our mental health laws are modernized, or they haven't been for decades, so that we can early intervene in case there is someone who is really unstable so that they don't get weapons, who have mental illnesses.
All of these things will get votes. What about the John Lewis legislation? Will the Democrats get an up or down vote on their bill that does not provide for the due process protections?
Again, our job is to protect the Constitution. Our job is to make sure that we swear an oath and we honor that oath of protecting constitutional rights. And by the way, the last thing I want to do is incentivize these tactics. The last thing I want to do is to a minority turn Congress into a college campus and allow that kind of activity to be rewarded.
So no, they're not going to get a vote. The reason I'm asking this because obviously when people turn on their television set and they see the latest tantrum, that's what they're going to be staging the tantrum about.
Yes. Yeah. So look, you win elections, get the majority, then you can set the agenda.
Okay.
That's what elections are all about.
All right.
But we believe we're addressing this issue in a very smart way while preserving and honoring the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We're going to see what amendments they offer. I haven't even seen what amendments they're offering. But the last thing we're going to do is surrender the floor over to these kinds of tactics when we know it's going to compromise the basic constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens.
All right, I want to talk about you mentioned that you've been in touch with the FBI. Speaking of the FBI, your reaction to that, and I know it's been a couple of days removed now, to the meeting between the Attorney General and Bill Clinton, apparently the day or two before the FBI was supposed to interview Hillary Clinton. Your reaction to the decision of the Attorney General to meet with Bill Clinton and then her sort of soft recusal on Friday?
Absolutely inappropriate. I can't imagine what she was thinking. She's a career prosecutor. She clearly knows better. It taints the entire thing, and I think it was very, very inappropriate. And I don't know what she was thinking, and it does taint the outcome. Look, James Comey is a real stand-up guy. He's the FBI director. I do believe that his integrity is unequaled. I know U.S. attorneys who serve in Congress who just claim that he is such a strong man of integrity. But to have the top law enforcement officer taint this in such a way, to me, was just inexcusable.
Are you satisfied that she has, in fact, recused herself sufficiently from the decision about the emails?
I don't think that's the case. And we're taking a look at this a little more deeply, and I'm going to meet with a number of my colleagues as well to discuss this. But I don't think you can have it both ways. I think she actually did more harm than good. I think it was Friday when she gave this interview where she acknowledged it was the wrong thing to do, but she wasn't going to do anything about it, really, other than just pass it on. I think that is a very strange response, and I think I don't think that's a sustainable response.
I have to ask you about this. The headline on the Huffington Post right now is GOP leaders totally ignored Donald Trump's anti-Semitic Clinton tweet. The image, which Trump later took down, showed the Democratic presidential candidate's face next to a Star of David that read, "Most corrupt candidate ever." The Anti-Defamation League denounced the tweet. Clinton called it blatantly anti-Semitic. Your reaction to Donald Trump's use of that image?
Look, anti-Semitic images, they've got no place in a presidential campaign. Candidates should know that. The tweet's been deleted. I don't know what flunky put this up there. They obviously got to fix that. We got to get back to the issues that matter to the public. I was doing the Kenosha Parade, the Virgin Parade, grilling brats and volunteers and family. If I had to stop everything and comment to a ridiculous tweet sent out by this campaign, I'd have no time for anything else.
Yeah, well, this is like the fifth time, though, that Donald Trump, who you are supporting, I remind you, has tweeted something.
You have reminded me this.
I know, but has tweeted something. At some point, does Reince Priebus, does somebody else need to get him on the phone and say, Mr. Trump, you've got to stop tweeting these things. These things are no longer accidents.
Yeah, I really believe he's got to clean up the way his new media works. But most importantly, as you know, this is one of the few times I spoke out against him during the primary very forcefully was in this area when he failed to disavow supremacists, white supremacists. And so, look, I made this really, really clear. The point is, I think he's got to clean this up. My understanding is this is done by staff, not by he himself. Right. But more importantly, they've got to clean this thing up.
You have been rolling out your GOP agenda. There's a big editorial in the Wall Street Journal, the better GOP agenda. The House tax reform is nearly revenue neutral on a dynamic basis, and you've laid out, your plans on Obamacare. Has Donald Trump endorsed or commented on any of your agenda so far?
He has. That's something we spent about a month talking with him on during the month of June and part of May, where we walk through all of the details of this to make sure that we have a willing supporter in the White House should he win the presidency. Look, let me tell people, go to better.gop. On the big issues of the day, we are putting out very specific, clear, and coherent conservative reforms that fix these issues. The tax reform one is the key. People will be able to file their taxes on a postcard. We will drop the tax rates on successful small businesses and all small businesses to no higher than 25%. Right now, it's almost 45% effectively. We will give all businesses, the ability to write off their investments in the year in which it takes place so they hire more people. We believe this is really fast pro-growth tax reform. The estimate from the Tax Foundation says it will create millions of jobs. It will create faster economic growth, more take-home pay. Tax reform, we think, is one of the crown jewels of getting the IRS out of our lives, getting big government reduced and limited, but most importantly, unleashing economic growth, getting wages up, getting us out of the doldrums of the Obama slow growth policies. This tax reform plan, we think, hits it just the right way. We think it's fiscally responsible, and it's an engine for economic growth and opportunity and higher wages. So these are the things we want to talk about.
One other question. There was a headline in the local newspaper last week that I'm not sure was completely accurate. It said, Paul Ryan says he's on the same page with Donald Trump on trade.
No.
Are you on the same page with Donald Trump on trade?
Yeah, you know headline writers. Look, he says he wants good, strong trade agreements. I want good, strong trade agreements, too. Who is against good, strong trade agreements? Who's against holding countries accountable for honoring the agreements they've already had? We do not have a trade agreement with China, by the way. We wouldn't be able to get one based upon their activities. But I do want to have good, strong trade agreements that are good for our country. But I think it's important that we not retreat from the world. We must engage in the world, because if we, the United States of America, do not write the rules of the global economy based on our rules, then others will write the rules in the global economy based on their rules, like China. And so retreating is not an answer. Engaging is the answer. And when we engage, I do agree with him, let's get really good agreements for our economy and our workers.
Speaker Paul Ryan, thanks so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it very much.
You bet, Charlie. Have a good one.